Shalom. First and foremost, before I begin this video, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakha Kodash, and also double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that still to this very day continue to rule very well, that's feeding the flock through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai, and also Shalom to the hopefully elect that's continually giving diligence to make your call and election sure in faith, true sincerity, and also in our charity and this labor of love. Shalom. Now, the topic of this video is going to be entitled Slavery Foretold in the Bible. All right, and this is pursuant to the captivity that ultimately us as a nation was going to go into, which we're in the midst of that captivity right now. All right, this is pretty much the last captivity that we're being made to serve. Thus saith Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, who these people inwardly called God and Jesus, in which their true names in ancient Hebrew is first and foremost Yahweh, which is the Heavenly Father, and his son's name, his only begotten son, is Yahweh Shai. All right. So we was taken captive as a nation into this last captivity, which is here in America. All right, and under the captivity of the Edomites, which that's the true biblical nationality of the so-called white man. We was taken into captivity under the Edomites, which was all conspired against us. In other words, these other nations that were in league with Esau has stole us and brought us into this man's hands. Now that starts with these Hamites, which are the so-called Africans, all right, which primarily reside on the northeastern, the eastern and the southeastern parts of the land of Africa, which that land today is known as modern day Africa. And also another key nation that played a part in our captivity, in this captivity here that we reside in, is the Ishmaelites, which the Ishmaelites goes back, or should I say the so-called Arabs go back to the nation of Ishmael. All right, the Ishmaelites. So we was taken into captivity and we was given unto the hands of these Edomites, all right, in which as a people we were stolen, all right, because not only did the so-called Africans and so-called Arabs, which are the Ishmaelites and the Hamites, not only did they take it into captivity or stole us and gave it to the hands of these Edomites, but also as well you had the nation of Edom that made their voyage here to the Americas, and basically the main objective of these Edomites was to take the northern kingdom tribes, which are the Gadites and the Reubenites, which is the so-called Native American Indians, the so-called Taino Indians, and so on and so forth, the Seminole Indians. And then you had the so-called Latino tribes that were also residing in this land as well. They were all taken into captivity. They were being brought under the power of Edom. And that was due to Christopher Columbus, who these people know as, which is real name is Cristobal Colon. And then you had the Spanish that came in and also took down the so-called Latino tribes. Okay. So during that time, all this was coming together. This was us being taken into captivity as a nation. Okay, because that's why it's called the transatlantic slave trade. Because with every ship that left out of each port during that time, during the transatlantic slave trade, none of those ships returned empty. All right. So you had ships that were coming in from the Americas, from the western part of Africa to Europe, and that's why it's called the transatlantic slave trade, because it was one voyage from one part of the world to the next. All right. So really this focus of this video is going to be on not only Edom, the nation Edom, but also these other nations are going to go into captivity under our rulership. And that's rightfully so, because when you take these people, the Israelites, into captivity, the Lord has a beef with you. All right. And that's the beef. All right. That is the beef. That's the beef that Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua has against these other nations, especially Edom. All right. That's the controversy that's going on right now. That's why it's such a stir recently about this new game by the name of Mortal Kombat 11, was the ending of Jax, showing him undoing slavery, and that pissed off a lot of Edomites. All right, because they don't want slavery to be undone. They want to keep us in a low, docile state. Okay, which once again, this is all conspired against us, man. All right, this council was already taken up against us to be taken down as a nation. Why is that, man? Because we're the people of the Lord. We're the Lord's chosen. All right. Because we're the ones that bring down righteousness on the planet Earth. Because due to us, that's how the planet Earth was established, through the covenants, the giving of the law, which is given to us by Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua. So the Lord laid down a certain rule, or a certain set of rules and restrictions that these people don't like. So that's why, starting with Edom, they want to keep us in a lower state, so that they can keep their riches, so they can keep their place here on the planet Earth, and by doing that, they believe that they have a chance at rulership. Because if you go into the book of Psalms, the 2nd chapter, it says, "Why leap ye high hills?" All right. But just to get into the scriptures, this is the book of Psalms, the 83rd chapter. I'm going to start at the 3rd verse. It says, "They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." See? So they taking crafty counsel against us, the people of the Lord, the nation of Israel, all right, and consulted against our hidden ones, man. All right. And they said, let us cut them off from being a nation, so that the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. And that's right. That's why during the time when we was taken into captivity, our nationality was beaten out of us. Our heritage was taken away. Pursuant to Jeremiah, I believe it's the 17th chapter. Actually, let me see if I can grab it. Jeremiah 17. Yep, 17:4. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 4. I'm going to go ahead and get this for edification's sake. It says, "And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for ye have kindled a fire in my anger which shall burn forever." See? So as a nation, we've discontinued from our heritage that the Lord gave us. All right. And now he's causing us to serve in our enemy's land, in which this land, we don't know about this land. All right. And what I mean by that is that this land wasn't known. Okay, because back in the ancient world, you had all the tribes that were here, or all the tribes that were on the eastern part of the world. All right, which the scholars call the so-called Fertile Crescent, and that was known as the known world back in those days. Okay, and then afterwards, then you had the northern tribes that made the voyage. If you go read Second Esdras, the book of Second Esdras, it'll tell you that they made the voyage from the eastern part of the world over to the western part of the world. All right, a man where never mankind dwelt. All right. So the Lord had us discontinue from our heritage, and he caused us to serve our enemies in the land which we do not. And why is that? Because we kindled a fire in his anger, which shall burn forever. And that's right. So the Lord was furious at us. Why? Because we transgressed his statutes and his commandments, pursuant to Deuteronomy, the 45th chapter. If you read through Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter and the 15th verse all the way down, it's like reading a history. It's like reading a history book. because it tells you exactly what happened to us during the time of the transatlantic slave trade. Okay. If you read the 46th verse, it says, "This shall be a sign of who we are." All right. Those curses being put on us is a sign of the Israelites, the sign of who they are. So if you read through those curses and you fit them to a certain people, you find out who the real Hebrew Israelites are. Okay. Now, I'm gonna go back, but let me bring this back to where I had it before. Right, now continue on at Psalms 83rd chapter in the 5th verse. It says, "For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee." All right, so they consulted together with one consent. All right, they were all in league with each other. So that's why the Lord is not going to leave no stone unturned when he's taking Edom into captivity along with these other nations. All right, verse 6, "The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites," mentioned by Ishmael earlier, right? The so-called Arabs, okay, "of Moab and the Hagarenes," right? The Moabites being the so-called Chinese today, all right, which they're known today as the so-called Chinese, right? And the Hagarenes, Gabal, right, which goes back into Ham, Ammon, which goes to the so-called Japanese, all right, because they also had a hand in our downfall as well back in the ancient world. It says, and Amalek, right, which is Amalekites, they stem from the nation of Edom, okay, because Amalek is the head of the nation of Edom, and their line traced toward the time of the Khazarian Empire, and the Khazarians were the ones that took the land of Israel, which is known today as Israel today, that land, and they're residing there right now to this very day. So those are Amalekites. Those are Khazars. All right. If you go into the history behind the Khazarian Empire, you'll find out that that's who they are. They're Amalekites. They're from the nation of Edom. They're at the top of the nation of Edom. All right. But they go around calling themselves the Jews or Jewish. All right. That's why you go in to read the book of Revelations, the 3rd chapter. And actually it's in both chapters, the second chapter and the 3rd chapter, and it's at the 3rd verse. He said the Lord knows them that call themselves Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. All right. Now, verse 7, it says, "Gabal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre, which is the Hamites, Ashur also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot, Salah." All right. So that's why, once again, like I mentioned before at the beginning of the video, is that the Lord has a controversy with these different nations. All right. So that dispels the notion or the claim that the Lord loves everybody. But yet, why would he speak about these other nations consulting against the nation of Israel? Because if it didn't matter, then the Lord wouldn't have allowed that to be put in his book. The Lord wouldn't have allowed that to even come out of his mouth. All right, because these words that we're reading about right now out of the Bible, these are the words of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, which were heard and are written down by ancient men, the prophets, all right, the apostles. So going to Amos, the 1st chapter, and I'm gonna go all the way down to let's go down to verse 9. It says, "Thus said the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom, and remember not the brotherly covenant." And that's right. Because Tyrus, if you're actually going to the word Tyrus, it goes back to the word Tyre or Tyre, which that goes into Ham. All right. Actually, I got a map up here, if I can pull it up, of Tyre, which which is on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. All right. And then under Tyre, or under Tyre and Zidon, you have Israel. All right. Because that's why you have this land by the name of Phoenicia, or the Phoenicians. All right. Or what? That's why they were called the Phoenician, because Phoenician, really, that's a Greek word for saying Philistine. All right. Oh, and that word Philistine also goes to the word, or ties into the word Palestine. So if you see in today's news concerning the Jewish, right, the so-called Jews, and then you have the Palestinians, well, really, both of them not even supposed to be in that land, all right, because the Palestinians are really Hamites. All right. Now, going back to Amos, the first chapter, in the 9th verse, says, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shah, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus, and for 4," talking about the Hamites, it says, "I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom." And did that not happen? Did they not give us over to the captivity of Edom? That did happen, man. That happened during the transatlantic slave trade. They gave us up to the captivity of Edom, which is the so-called white man. And remember not the brotherly covenant. And that's right, Edom did not remember the brotherly covenant, man. You know, Edom, the nation of Edom has not honored the brotherly covenant at all during the course of history. All right. So that's why we don't look at them as brothers anymore. All right. Even though by blood, or the bloodline, right, out of the womb of Rachel, right, and from the loins of Isaac came Jacob and Esau, which technically, if you want to go back to all the way during the time of Isaac, and Slacky, I said Rachel, Slacky, Rebecca. So if you want to go all the way back to the time of Rebecca, was when we came out of the womb, then technically we are brothers. But guess what? During the course of history, when Edom was I want to say disregard, but when Edom was pretty much giving us hell throughout that time, and all the way up to till today, the Lord has disregarded that brotherly covenant between us. And that's why it's so much animosity between Israel and Edom. That's why it's so much animosity between Jacob and Esau. All right. But once again, just to recant about Isaac and Rebecca, you know, I said Rachel, so Slakia. Slakia, that, you know, as a slip of the tongue. Now continue on at verse 10, it said, "But I will send a fire on the wall of Tyrus, which shall devour the palaces thereof." Verse 11, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually," right, which is everlasting, "and he kept his wrath forever." So there you go. So the Lord also has Edom involved in this, the so-called white man, because he's the main culprit behind our captivity. Because guess what? The ones who funded this captivity or conducted it were the Amalekites, the so-called Jewish. All right, because during the time after the Dark Ages, after that 1,000-year period, pursuing the book of Revelations about the dragon being cast down to the bottomless pit and us ruling for 1,000 years. And then after that 1,000-year period was up, then came out the Edomites out of their lower state and started to rule. And that was the time which today is known as the Renaissance era. Which the word Renaissance means rebirth. All right. So with that being said, you know, during that time, then you have Edom or Esau which came back up into power through Amalek. And that's when the slave trade came about afterwards. All right. Because once again, Edom was the one that conducted and manifested the transatlantic slave trade. All right. Now, verse 12, it says, "But I will send a fire upon Teman," all right, which is a sect of Edom, "which shall devour the palaces of Bosra." All right, because Bosra is the capital of Edom. All right, and if you read on further down, it's going to go into Ammon. But that's pretty much it on that precept there. I want to go ahead and get to the book of, actually, let me get it right here. Get the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter. And before I grab Joel, the 3rd chapter, I want to grab Jeremiah. All right, this is the book of Jeremiah, the 50th chapter, in the 33rd verse. It said, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, how about Shemel Shai? The children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together." Let me read that again. "Thus saith the Lord, power of hosts, the Lord of Israel." All right, that came out through the Spirit. The Lord of hosts, how about Shemel Shai? The children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together. When did that happen? During the time of the transatlantic slave trade. All right. It says, "And all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go." All right. And how do we know that this is talking about the transatlantic slave trade or this current captivity that we're in right now? Well, let's go back to the Joel, which I had earlier, Joel, the 3rd chapter. Because also in that same verse, in Jeremiah, the 50th chapter, it says they held us fast and would not let us go. And they're not going to let us go. Why? Because we're the ones that is basically keeping their economy going. And that's one of the reasons why. The second reason why is because they know that we're the sons of the Most High. They know that we're the children of the Most High, man. All right. And they know that if they were to allow us out of this captivity and give us our land back, that's the end of their rulership. That's the end of their dominion over the planet Earth. All right. So that's why now to this very time, Edom, along with these other nations, are trying to keep us in the lower state. That's why if you go into the book of Revelations, which we're going to get in a little bit, is that they sent gifts one to another because we oppressed them. All right. So this is the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter. And I'm start at verse 3. It says, "And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon?" That's right. So they have cast lots for our people, and given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine. When did that happen? During the transatlantic slave trade. They asked, and those are actual accounts of what happened. They gave the Israelite boys over to these slave masters to be in harlot, man. All right, and those are one of the vile acts of Edom. Okay, and selling a girl for wine, and it wasn't just regular wine. All right, actually they sold our people for watered down wine. All right, watered down wine and musket guns. Okay. It says, "Yea," I'm going to read verse 4 again. It says, "Yea, and what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me," right? So if you even try to recompense us, "swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head." All right. And if you go into the Tyre and Zidon, right, and all the coast of Palestine, that's what I just showed you earlier, right? This is the coast of Palestine right here, which is known as the Greek word for Palestine is Phoenicia. All right. So you got Tyre right there. You got Zidon. That's right up above it. Which is right next to Syria. Okay. Now, verse 5 said, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried unto your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem, right, what I just read earlier in Jeremiah the 50th chapter, 33rd verse, the children of Judah and the children of Israel were pressed together. So it says, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. See? And you already know that that's talking about right now, because the Grecians, which Grecia goes back to Greek, or the Greeks, all right? Who were the Greeks back in the ancient world? They were the so-called white men, the Edomites, all right? So for what? So that they can remove us far from our border, all right? Now verse 7 said, behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. See? So the place where they have sold us, which is here in America, all right, and it said, and will return your recompense upon your own head, all right? So they sold us to where we'll also be sold here to America. We'll be sold also in parts of Europe, where you have Israelites in the northern part, where you have London and other regions as well in Europe. And you still have Israelites in the western part of Africa today. All right. So when you go into the deliverance of the nation of Israel, primarily it's going to be done here in America. Why? Because America is known in prophecy, or known in the scriptures as Babylon the Great. All right. So he's gonna once Edom's time is finished, guess what? He's gonna raise us up out of the place where we were sold, and he's gonna return the recompense upon their own head. All right. So once again, it's going to the time that we're coming into right now, where the Lord is raising up his men out of this captivity. All right, and he's about to return the recompense upon their own head. Right. Like I read in the book of Amos, the first chapter, where it goes into a whole list. And actually, let me see if I can grab another precept, Slocky. All right. Yeah. So back at the same chapter, Psalm 83rd chapter, which I started off with, at verse 6, it says, actually, I'm starting at verse 5. It says, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, that's first on the list, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon, and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assurance also joined with them. They are hoping the children of Lot, Salah. Right. So once again, that's going to the list of nations that the Lord has a controversy in a beef with, man. Okay. Those are the ones who's going to return the recompense upon their own head. Okay. It's like you. There's another precept it just popped up in my head. I'm trying to get it. Bear me for 1 second. No, it's not the one I'm looking for. But the Spirit allows it to come back to me. Now I want to grab the book of Revelations. Right, I'll start at Revelation the 11th chapter. I'm in off on this chapter here. Revelation the 11th chapter and the 8th verse says, "And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified." Right. So the place where it's spiritually called Sodom and Egypt is talking about here in America. Okay. Because you go into Sodom and Gomorrah, that was a place of abominations. All right. What I mean by that is you had a whole lot of homosexual acts and freakism that was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, and the same thing is going on here in America. All right. It's also known as Egypt as well, is because Egypt is known as the house of bondage. All right. And if you go into Deuteronomy 28 chapter in the 6th to 8th verse, it says that we'll be brought into Egypt again with ships. And that's specific, man. That's a specific kind of captivity, man. No other nation has ever gone into captivity in slave ships other than us. All right. And it says where also our Lord was crucified. And this is where our Lord is being crucified to this very day. All right. Not physically. All right. You know, the Lord didn't come back in the flesh once again to be crucified again, of course. But it's talking about spiritually, man. All right. And it says, verse 9, it says, "And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves." See? So all these nations have seen us in a dead state. All right. For a certain period of time, which 3 days and a half, you know, Lord's will, I'll go into extra video on that, because that's actually, it's not literally 3 days and a half, but it's a certain amount of time that we was in a dead state. And that was during the time when we were taken down as a nation into captivity. All right. And it says, "And shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves." And that's right. So when you lay a dead body in the grave, that's a form of giving you rest. All right. You know, they haven't suffered us to give us rest, and they haven't given us rest. All right. And they haven't allowed us to even rest. All right. So really, they further the affliction. Okay. Verse 10, it says, "And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth." See? So all these other nations rejoiced at our downfall. They made merry and they sent gifts one to another. All right. And guess what? A form of those gifts was actually us. All right. Because why? Because these two prophets, which represents Judah and Israel, the two kingdoms. It said because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. That's right. So we tormented them, man. We gave them harsh hell. That's why they despise us of who we are, or despise us because of who we are. All right. Now, verse 11, just to end it off, it says, "And after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from the Most High entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them." All right. So after that time, the spirit of life has came back into the men of the Lord, and now we're standing upon our feet, and now you're starting to see the fear fall on these people that's outside the nation of Israel. You started to see these Edomites quiver in fear because they see us waking up and coming back to our true nationality, and that the spirit of life from the Most High is entering back into us. All right. And they're fearing not only Edom, but these other nations. They're fearing that their power is going to be given back to us, because they don't want us to have that power back. That means the end of their good times, man. That's pretty much, that's the end of the party. All right. Verse 12, it says, "And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them." Okay. Where that's us being taken up by Yahushai out of this hellhole, and our enemies are going to behold us. Okay. Verse 13 says, in the same hour, at that same time, right, was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and in the earthquake was slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted and gave glory to the Most High of heaven, the power of heaven. All right, so in that same time, that's when the destruction is going to commence. That's why we speak about the thermonuclear missiles, the ICBMs, to be shut off and to destroy this place, America, and also as well other parts of the world is going to be destroyed by fire as well. All right, and that's going to be done through the hands of our Lord Yahweh Shai. So all this is being conducted under the watchful eye of Yahweh Bashim Shai, and by his hands, this is how this current kingdom is going to end. All right. So with that, I'm going ahead and end out this video on that note. And our Lord's will, it was edifying to the body of Yahweh Bashim Shai, to the members of the whole elect. And until next time, once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule very well. And also shalom, salutations to the whole elect that's continually pushing in this laborious work. That's still doing it in faith, truth, sincerity, and all diligence, and also in this sincerity and in charity. And with that, I'm going to say shalom.